Alright, I want to thank all of you who asked when I would be doing another update. I know it's been several months, but I'm glad that you guys find these interesting enough to continue watching. But my thinking is that if I don't have anything particularly interesting to talk about, why blab just for the sake of blabbing? But hey, that's just me. As I mentioned sometime last year, I've been writing for some time, and one of the projects that I recently completed is my one-man play. I'm now in the development stages, or the character work. What's the theme, you may ask? I'm thinking you'll have to come to the reading workshop later this year to find out. As for some theater that I've seen over the last few months, one of the best Broadway recommendations that I can make is The 39 Steps. It's the very successful comedy based on Alfred Hitchcock's 1935 film. I saw it back in January, and I can't remember laughing so much from beginning to end for any show. 4 actors who assume a myriad of characters in a very fast-paced ride. The expansive and creative use of minimal props is unbelievably effective. It's rare that an adaptation of a novel, less more than a film, outpaces its most current production, but in this case, you have to give the creative genius of these guys their props. Another noteworthy off-Broadway play that also has a cast of 4 actors and has been running for several months and doing really well is The Castle at New World Stages. It's produced by Eric Krebs and has an open-ended run. It's the story of 4 former prisoners telling their stories of how they landed there and how they landed on their feet. It's similar in style of The Exonerated, if you're familiar with the play, but differs in that it's actually the participants, not actors, telling their stories, at least in the current New York City production. The play's origin comes out of director David Rothenberg's 1967 off-Broadway play Fortune in Men's Eyes, about a man's experience in a youth detention center. Now, this led to David's founding the nonprofit Fortune Society with a mission to improve prison conditions and help ex-convicts get back on their feet. The castle itself is actually located on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. It's formerly a Catholic church. The stories range from a child abuse to a childhood runaway, which leads to becoming a drug dealer. There's a refusal of opportunities for instant gratification, which leads to a drug addiction. There's also a burglary. Now, this is a great outreach program that's appealing to a lot of youth. Now, the best part of the narrative, however, is hearing the end results of their stories, the strength, the redemption, the success that they all 4 experience. Now, lastly, following the trend of 4-character off-Broadway plays is Cherry Smoke by James McManus, which played at the Kirk Theater on Theater Row. I really enjoyed the gritty realism. It's not sugar-coated, it's in-the-gut raw drama. It reminds me, in fact, of Sam Shepard's style of writing dysfunctional relationships, is with the brutality and suffering. Not that I'm applauding brutality and suffering. It's set in industrial Pittsburgh with the remnants of a still thriving steel industry. Now, as you know, Pittsburgh has been putting itself on the map with its thriving, diverse art and culture as it remakes itself, and it continues to impress. It's a city worth taking a visit to. Now, as for cinema, I watched Chasing Freedom. It was directed by Don McBrearty in 2001, starring Juliette Lewis. The film was inspired by the true story of a woman seeking asylum from the Taliban in her homeland of Afghanistan to the U.S. after she's discovered teaching local women how to read, which is forbidden and of course puts her life in grave danger. It was a very relevant film then as it is now, with the topic of immigration having been so relevant and contested during our recent presidential election. Now, the events coincide with 9/11 and evoke very strong emotions, as you would expect, but also give a glimpse of the inside of an overburdened Immigration Services Department, the immense red tape for those fleeing to safety or to something better. It's one I highly recommend you see. Now, we all know that when the urge for fiction reading hits us, what do? We tend to flock to the bestseller section of the New York Times, O Magazine, or our local newspaper for something to tide us over. I often find it challenging to make time to read for fun instead of work-related topics. So in addition to a few acting books that are probably on most actors' shelves, I set aside some time for escapism with Dean Koontz's The Good Guy. Now, it's the first of his works that I've read, so I really didn't know what to expect. It's the story of an ordinary man pushed to the limits with an adversary who's cold, whose malice is unlimited. The novel is very suspenseful, with weaving plot and subplot. It's dark, but not depressing. It's a fairly quick read. So, in fact, it reminds me of the Robert Parker novels, which are based on the old Spencer for Hire TV series. Unfortunately, that may be a little hard to find, but you can probably find it on DVD. I think it's worth giving a look. Now, I've enclosed a direct link to Dean Koontz's website in the description of the text alongside the video, or you can simply go to Dean Koontz, K-O-O-N-T-Z, to listen to the author talking about his writing and other creative pursuits, his family, and so forth. All right. Now, most recently, a book that I read that many of you are probably familiar with if you haven't read it. It's called The Alchemist by Brazilian author Paulo Coelho. It's a novel written in everyman fashion or based in parables using an Andalusian shepherd boy's journey from his home in Spain to the pyramids of Egypt. Now, what starts out as a quest for tangible wealth turns into a much more life-fulfilling journey. A friend highly recommended it to me, and I'm recommending it to you because I think we all share a common anxiety right now with the current global economic status, and this is meant to remind you of the core values that we need to hold on to keep us grounded and centered during stressful times that we're all experiencing. Now, it's the 20th anniversary of the book, and it's sold in paperback. The Alchemist is very well known around the world, with acknowledgments by the New York Times, the London Times, the San Francisco Chronicle, and many more. Its original title is O Alchemista, with now more than 65 million copies in 150 countries and 60 languages. There's also a video online at Amazon.com of Paulo talking about what inspires him to continue writing, and of course he has a number of other books out that you're probably familiar with. On the music front, I finally had the opportunity to spend an evening at Jazz at Lincoln Center. If you come to New York and you're a fan of jazz, you owe it to yourself to attend. A brief history of Jazz at Lincoln Center. Jazz musician Wynton Marsalis has served as artistic director of the center since its inception, a true octogenarian wearing many hats from trumpeter to composer, band leader, and arts advocate, as well as being the first jazz musician to be awarded the Pulitzer Prize for Music in 1997. Now, the night that I attended, the SF Jazz Collective performed. As part of the mission of JALC, the collective was started in 2004, in which some of the industry's most noted musicians got together and played homage to the artist of the season. Some of those artists were Coltrane, Herbie Hancock, Thelonious Monk, to name a few. The collective composed some of these icons' popular standards, as well as their own original scores. Let me just say that this evening was a gift, to sit back and just listen to live jazz. So sweet. You have to go, guys. You can't miss this. Trust me on this one. Now, the evening's performance included many award-winning musicians. If you're a jazz fan, you probably know sax player Miguel Zignon. There's tenor sax Joe Lovano. On trumpet, Dave Douglas. On trombone is Robin Eubanks. Now, when you attend, try to see something in the Allen Room. You'll really be impressed with the theater-like design, excellent acoustics, of course, tiered seating, but the backdrop is not to be missed. The rear of the stage is New York City's skyline via plexiglass. Yeah. All right, and now some politics. I know they say we shouldn't, but I'm gonna. You probably had your fill, and I agree, with words like crisis and global financial meltdown. And yes, of course, things really are bad. But how about some good news for a change? Or better yet, if you think we have it bad? The country of Zimbabwe, barely a year ago, had basically collapsed in on itself, with self-proclaimed President 84-year-old Robert Mugabe still at its head, refusing to relinquish power to would-be democratically elected Morgan Tsvangirai, leader of the DMC, or opposition party. The country had an unofficial inflation rate of, get this, 15 billion%, not million, billion. Well, a year later, this is how things stand. As of January 30th of this year, Mr. Tsvangirai was pressed to cave in to the diplomatic and political pressure by South Africa and regional countries, who, by the way, pledged their support to ensure an equitable sharing of governing power to help the country's people by entering a government of national unity with Mr. Mugabe. Right. So, Mr. Tsvangirai gave in reluctantly, as he had been negotiating with Mr. Mugabe for months to no avail on issues like release of political detainees. Sound vaguely familiar? Freedom of the press, reforming the central bank, the little things. Now, the new government was supposed to start work on February 13th. Even though the US and Britain stand at the ready to offer financial aid, it hinges on Mr. Mugabe's complying with the new rules. Not very hopeful.